Long live the Empire.
Hello there.
This is where the fun begins.
Hey there guys, Unofficial Star Wars here. Hope you're all doing well, and welcome to my reaction video for The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 7. This here's my quick thoughts, initial thoughts, and overall reaction to this episode. Let's hop into it. I've got to start out by saying that if you didn't like the previous episode, if you didn't like me at my worst, then you don't deserve me at my best. This year has to be my new favorite episode of The Mandalorian. Moff Gideon is beyond intimidating, and to also see that Giancarlo Esposito's villain of Moff Gideon got a lot more screen time and actual appearance here than I had initially thought here as well, compared to those leaks that we had recently talked about and discussed here on the channel here as well, also in our preview video here on the channel. Was really quite a lot more than I had initially thought, and then also that entire ending that had went on there as well. It almost feels like a little bit repetitive to a point of where in the last season of The Mandalorian Season 2, things go bad. They go south for our heroes. In that episode of Season 2, we saw that's when the Dark Troopers come down, they take Grogu away when they're on Tython and everything like that, before the finale, which is already next week for this episode, and I'm not ready for it. I want more Mando. So that being said, it definitely seems as though that we're seeing something similar to what we did see in the previous episode of, or rather the previous season of The Mandalorian here overall. I definitely think that a lot of things are set up here for the finale of what we're going to be seeing here and everything like that. Moff Gideon's initial, I think, plan here as well is something that's finally being uncovered. We also discussed in a recent leaks video here on the channel into the regards of The Mandalorian Season 3. Those leaks, of course, coming from this overall episode, because this episode was shown early at Star Wars Celebration, so from there, of course, a few spoilers and leaks are going to, of course, go around. We also see the fall of Paz Vizsla here. Finally, his character seems to be dead, but it is Star Wars. Nobody ever really seems to stay dead, so I'm kind of hoping that he does kind of stay dead, although, of course, I will miss him. It is a very sweet and sour thing there, but I think that he did the proper thing in for standing up for the Mandalorians and the two creeds there and sacrificing himself for them. But as I had mentioned, that we also see the grand scheme, the grand plan that Moff Gideon really does seem to have here. Ever since his introduction in Season 1, it was kind of like, what is this guy about? What's his deal? And from there, we kind of begin to learn a little bit more that he's building up towards what we see in the First Order later on in the sequel trilogy, 30 years down the line, at the events of what we're seeing here. And I think that this episode really makes it more official, and it was also beyond cool to see that he was wearing this Mandalorian black helmet, this Mandalorian type of helmet here, similar to what the Armorer has for her helmet, with those horns on top of the helmet that signify that she was maybe a follower at one time of Maul and what he had believed in, that we see it in the Clone Wars. And I think that we could maybe see the same thing here from Moff Gideon. Why does this guy think that he's a Mandalorian is something else that I'm kind of wondering here as well. Now, in recent interviews with Giancarlo Esposito himself, the actor for the character of Moff Gideon, he kind of describes and explains that Moff Gideon, when we see him again in Season 3 like we just did in this episode, he's power hungry, and that's the best way to describe him of what we do see him in this episode. And so then also speaking of on the topic of leaks and kind of spoilers there and different rumors there as well for the third season of The Mandalorian, into the regards of this black helmet that Moff Gideon is wearing, this a whole Mandalorian black outfit getup that he has going on here. We also see that he has these First Order troopers that we see for another thing that is something that we kind of discussed and talked about here on the channel almost 6+ months ago now. So to kind of see these leaks and talk about these leaks and see them come to fruition and actually happen is honestly something that's really cool in my thoughts and opinions. Of course, it's kind of oh, you're spoiling yourself, but then again, I'm just such a lover for Star Wars, so it's kind of cool to see this stuff actually happen here. And then same thing goes for the Pepitarian, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Those red guards there also coming in, also just mentioning them as well as another kind of hint at something that we were going to be seeing these characters appear in the third season of The Mandalorian. But not just that, but we also see the little IG, now 12, IG-11 as kind of a cybernetic type of mecha droid that Grogu is riding around in. This is something else that we had talked about and reported here on the channel 6+ months ago, and I remember first reading about this and talking about it here on the channel, and so it brings you back for one thing, but it's cool to actually see this stuff happen, as I had also mentioned. It definitely seemed like a really cool concept, and to see that actually happen is something something really cool. I kind of want that one as a Lego set. You guys know I'm a big Lego nerd. I have a Lego channel linked in the description down below. But then also seeing the differences and the difficulties that these two creeds of like the Night Owls and then also what the Children of the Watch have there, that they haven't heard very much about each other, but the things that they have heard about each other they absolutely hate, is something that Bo-Katan mentions in this episode. So seeing these two different I guess clans here working together here is something else that's kind of nice to look forward to and to see here as well. Seeing them come together more and more, I think, is something that will be a common theme here by the finale of Season 3, but not just that, but also Season 4 as well. Something that I've discussed here on the channel time in and time out into the regards of our Mandalorian Season 3 videos is that I'm very heavy on the belief that this overall season is something that's very remnants of what we had for Season 1 of The Mandalorian, and that it's not really having like an overarching villain like Season 2 did, with Moff Gideon kind of always being a looming threat there throughout the entirety of the season. And instead, with Season 1, what we see is that we're seeing Grogu and Din Djarin just trying to survive the rafts of the galaxy, and that's exactly what we're kind of seeing in this season. And then until the end of the actual season itself is when we see the villain here actually popping up, once again now being Moff Gideon. And I also had to mention time in and time out here into the regards of our Mandalorian Season 3 videos, is that Moff Gideon is more out for vengeance here at that as well against the Mandalorians. He has a little bit of a history with them now. It has all the more reason to not like them, to want to go after them, want to wipe them out and everything like that. I kind of briefly mentioned in one of our leak videos previously here before on the channel, is that it doesn't really make sense, I feel like, all that much, that like Moff Gideon would be so hung up here essentially over the Mandalorians. Like, why is he like so obsessive over them, I think is the best answer. And he sees them as posing a threat. And then also what he see him like mentioned here in this episode here as well, is that he wants to take bits and parts, the best bits and parts at that, of the previous civilizations, like the Jedi, like the Mandalorians, and like the Empire all at once, take their best features essentially and stick them all into one thing. He's power hungry and he wants that role of what Thrawn is, and we also get multiple like name drops and references to Thrawn in this episode here as well. Those are all kind of things I'll be breaking down in a separate future video here on the channel into the regards of all the different Easter eggs and things that you might have missed throughout this Mandalorian episode here in a full breakdown video. I'll have it later out on the channel here later out, so stay on the lookout for that by hitting the subscribe button and that notification bell to be notified for when that video is coming out. What an amazing episode of The Mandalorian. I'm still kind of just taking it all in, letting it all sink in, and it just, wow. Rick, the director of this episode, Rick Famuyiwa, I think is how you maybe pronounce his name. Is probably wrong though. Outdid himself. The episode looked visually stunning, visually great, and especially when you compare it to last week's episode. I personally, for one, really liked last week's episode. It might have not been the best episode, but it felt very remnants of what the Clone Wars episodes were. So seeing that and then kind of going to this is just a cool transition here overall, and then to see all the Star Wars fans flick like a light switch here and go from absolutely just despising and hating The Mandalorian to absolutely loving it with this episode here. Of course, let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below. I'm pretty sure that people are loving this episode here. And then also seeing the lower levels of Coruscant at the beginning of this episode, and Elia Kane, having Dr. Pershing being mentioned, how he's going to be a bigger role and a bigger play into all of this. This episode is titled The Spies. Who exactly would be the spies? Elia Kane, of course, would be obvious, but I've heard a little bit of a theory going around that maybe the armorer isn't who we think she is and could be more of a spy than we initially thought. She is wearing that same helmet that Moff Gideon is with the Mandalorian look, so let me know of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys all think. Of course, as I had mentioned, we'll have our breakdown video going in depth into all the different Easter eggs and things that you might have missed throughout this overall episode here out on the channel later in the day, so stay on the lookout for that by hitting the subscribe button and that notification bell to be notified for when that video is coming out. We're also just talking and discussing all types of Star Wars related news, leaks, rumors, theories, and breakdowns here on the channel, so it's all the more reason to join us today. Anyway, have a great one, guys. May the Force be with you as always. This has been Unofficial Star Wars. Peace out.